is how we come to Elohim. So we bow before Elohim through his word. That's the first choice. The second choice is that this letter also represents the Nachash. We see that it's shaped like a serpent, that we can crawl on our bellies like the serpent and be enslaved to the enticements of the Satan. Nachash has a similar root that means to observe the signs, to learn from experience, and to diligently observe. But it also means to practice fortune-telling and witchcraft. Years ago, I studied under a rabbi who taught that to engage in false doctrine, to knowingly engage in false doctrine, is a form of witchcraft. Okay? So if we engage in false doctrine and we don't know, then we're simply operating within our measure of faith. We can make teshuvah when we find out and stop doing it. But if we find out that we're operating in false doctrine or in a takanot, a rabbinical decree that goes contrary to Torah, and we discover that it actually is what it is, and we continue in it because we don't want to be seen as stupid or foolish or anything, we don't want people pointing the finger at us, then we're practicing witchcraft. We're bowing before Satan like the Nachash. In this name, we are faced with a multitude of choices that can take us on a path to Elohim or on a path away from Him. It is our choice, but to seek Elohim requires action. The name Eliezer means Elohim has helped. One of the roots of this name is Azar, that means to help, but it also means to surround, to protect, and to support. If we recall that the root of Ben means son, but that the root is Bana, that means to establish, restore, renew, and build up, then we can formulate an idea that says when we choose to seek Elohim in our lives, we are established in Him, and with His help, we are surrounded, protected, and supported. We are restored, renewed, and built up in Him. Which brings us to the name Aaron. Aaron means light bringer. We see that Eliezer is the son of Aaron, which gives us Ben Aaron. When we are established and renewed by Yahweh Elohim, light comes into our lives. We believe in and receive Yeshua, the restoration, redemption, and deliverance of Yahweh, who is and who was the light of the world. What did Pinchas do? First, we read that he saw it from the word ra'ah. It means not only to see, but it also means to inspect, to consider, to perceive, to discern, to take heed, and to understand. What is it that he saw? He witnessed the iniquity of the man of Israel and the woman of Midian, a word that means strife and contention. So we can formulate another idea to add to our things to think about. Our first step in taking action is to recognize what does and does not belong in our relationship and worship of Elohim. The next phrase says, he rose up from the midst of the congregation. The word for rose up is vayakam. It comes from the root kum, which means to rise, but as well as to establish oneself, to endure, to make good, and to be strengthened. In the phrase from the midst, we have tohe from a similar root, tavak, which means not only in the midst or in the middle, but it also means to sever and divide, leaving what is in the center. So the idea here is that in our walk with and in our service to Yahweh Elohim, we are not to go to the left or to the right. We are to stay on the narrow path that leads to life, a path that according to Yeshua, very few find. This idea takes us to the word for congregation. Now this word for congregation makes a very, very tremendous statement by itself. This word is edah. That means congregation, but its root, found in the midst of this word, is where the impact of this action is found. The root is ad, that means witness. Very few find the path, as Yeshua said, because they cannot perceive the door. We have ad, that perceive the door. We have ayin, that means perception, and dalet, that means door. Okay? They can perceive the door. Now, what else is interesting about ad? What helps us to stay on the narrow path? What helps us to have the perception that we have to have? When Yeshua was asked what the most important commandment was, he didn't just say, you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength. He didn't pop that off right off the top of his head. The first thing he said was, Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. He said, hear, O Israel, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh is Echad. Why? We've discussed why. We've discussed the meaning of the Shema and why it's so important. So when we consider the Shema, those of you that have Torahs, if you go to to Devarim, which is not marked, but if you go to Devarim 6:4, and you look in the Hebrew, you'll notice that in Shema, the ayin is enlarged. And if you'll notice in the word echad, the dalet is enlarged. So in the Shema, you take the last letter of the first word and the last letter of the last word and you put them together, it spells witness. Through the Shema, through our being able to perceive, discern, understand, apply, obey what the Word is telling us and be content to build our relationship with our Elohim, that we are a testimony. The word ad also means testimony. Okay? This is what sets us apart, that in keeping our oath, which is the Shema, we are set apart to Yahweh Elohim and are able to love Him with all of our being. We cannot fully love Yahweh Elohim if we are not able to realize our responsibility in the Shema. And what does that mean, not being able to realize our responsibility in the Shema? That we don't take the time to understand why we worship what we worship. We simply take whatever they say and we add that to our belief system. When we can do this, we are able to follow through with the words in the balance of this verse. And took a spear in his hand. Vayikach ramach beyadu. So vayikach, as we learned, and took, but its root means to take a hold of. In the word for spear, we have ramach, which literally means to throw, but it's the letters that give us much more meaning. Because in ramach, we have the resh, which means authority. We have the mem, which means the word. So the authority of the word that keeps us under. Then we have a het. Well, didn't we say that the het is a Hebrew word for sin? Didn't we say that the het means wall? The thing is that all Hebrew letters are composed of other Hebrew letters with the exception of Yod. Yod is the smallest letter. It composes all the other letters. If we talk about het, we have the Zion that is yoked to the Vav. Now what do we see? That we must yoke ourselves to the Word. We must yoke ourselves to Elohim. This little doodad right here is called a chuppah. What do we do under the chuppah? We get married. That we must accept when He offers the wine, when He offers the bread. This is it's a very ancient Jewish marriage proposal. I'm offering you the bread. If you allow me, I will provide for you. I will provide your sustenance. I'll take care of you. You won't lack for anything. If you take the bread and eat it, you say, I do. Offers you the wine, says, this is my life force. This is my blood. I will protect you. I will take care of you. I will shed my blood for you. I'm entering into a covenant based on this with you. If you take the wine and you drink, then you say, I do. Then you are married. Why put the blood on the doorposts and the lintel? Because when you put, here's your doorpost, and here's your lintel, and here's your other doorpost, when you put the blood on the doorpost and the lintel, you make the letter Het. You're saying that I am trusting in the restoration, redemption, and deliverance from death that comes from Yahweh. We say, I trust in Yeshua, because it's the blood of Yeshua that was shed at Passover, just like the blood of the lamb was shed at the first Passover, so that we would not have to taste death. But when it's offered, he's saying, will you marry me? We say, I do. And we see this in the letter Het. So when we say this, that it is the authority of the word that keeps us under the chuppah, that keeps us under the protection, the nourishment, and the rest of Elohim. This is what we take a hold of with all of our strength, represented by the word beyadu, meaning in his hand. So that is what we now do as a witness with this authority. We worship in spirit and in truth. We seek truth in our worship. His hand, not her hand. The idea is that we have to find true worship. We have to seek the truth of the word. We have to pray positively instead of saying, Elohim, I'm so sick, I'm so sick, I'm so sick, I'm so sick. Elohim says, okay, you're sick. Instead of saying, Elohim, thank you that I feel so much better, that you've healed me from this illness. We go into a positive relationship and remove those things that don't belong there. So we're going to take a real quick rabbit trail, because I know everybody's tired. But we read about the Israelite man and the Midianite woman. I love King Jimmy's version. It says, the Midianitish woman. I said, Midianitish, wow, that's pretty cool. So, but verse 14 says, now the name of the man of Israel that was slain, who was slain with the Midianite woman, was Zimri.
Where are you at?
Oh, I'm in verse 14 of Bamidbar 25. Okay. We're taking a rabbit trail.
All right.
Okay? We've skipped down a little bit, and then we're going to come back up to verse 8. Because this helps us to understand verse 8. But it says, now the name of the man of Israel that was slain, who was slain with the Midianite woman, was Zimri, the son of Salu, a leader of the fathers of the house among the Simeonites. And the name of the Midianite woman that was slain was Cosbi, the daughter of Zur. He was the head of the people of a father's house in Midian. Now, where verse 6 shows us in action, verse 8 shows us the action that we must take as a witness or a testimony of Yahuwah and his word. It not only applies to our relationship with the teaching and the nurturing that comes from it, but our responsibility to teach and nurture others, but it also applies to our own growth, our own self-examination, and our relationship with Yahweh Elohim. So we're going to take this rabbit trail, and we're going to consider some things. Who was the man of Israel, and what does this Midianitish woman represent? Now, we've talked about Ish, that is the physical worship, and Isha, woman, is the spirit that comes from it. Then the names of these people should line up with that idea, and they should give us some idea as to what's going on. The man's name was Zimri, meaning my music. The root of this name is Zamar, meaning to sing or to praise. So far there's nothing wrong. We praise. He was the son of Salu, that means to be weighed down, that comes from the root Salah, which means to make light of something or to reject something. What is being rejected? Is it praise that's being rejected, or do we find the answer in the name of Simeon, a tribe in which Salu was a chief? Simeon, or in this case Shimoni, means hearkening, listening, paying attention, heeding. Comes from the root Shema. That means more than simply to listen. It means to perceive, to discern, to understand, to apply, to obey, and to be content. So, was Zimri taking light of and rejecting praise? Or is it perhaps that he was rejecting the Shema, the oath taken to Yahweh Elohim that was being rejected, or being taken lightly? Okay? Do we take lightly the things of Elohim? Or do we take the time to look at it so that we can discern it and apply it to our lives? Now, the Midianite woman's name was Cosbi, meaning my lie. Finds its root in kazab, which means to lie, to be a liar, to be proven to lie, and to deceive. She was the daughter of Zur, that means rock, from a singular primitive root that means to bind, to besiege, to confine, to be an adversary, to delineate, or to go off the straight line. So what idea can we formulate? We must do away with any worship that rejects or makes light of the Shema, our oath to Yahweh Elohim. We must not enter into anything that teaches a lie or is deceptive, as it comes from the adversary. Satan means adversary, and will lead to our being bound and straying away from the straight and narrow path. So we see the importance in these names, that one actually represents praise, but it's a lax type of praise that rejects the things of Elohim. We have doctrine and takanot that reject the things found in the Torah. These give birth to a spirit that is deceptive. But now we go into the action part in verse 8, because now we can consider the relevance now that we have these understandings. And he went after the man of Israel into the chamber and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her belly, so that the plague was stayed from the children of Israel. So if we consider what we've just discussed, we might see a little bit more clearly what verse 8 is saying. In the phrase, and he went after the man of Israel into the chamber, we get a picture of action being taken. We could consider from what we've learned in verses 14 and 15 that some action is necessary to go after false doctrine that goes contrary or against the Shema, our oath to Elohim. We might say that it is false worship or doctrine that is being taught as being solid as a rock by someone making claims that this worship is built on the fact that Elohim prevails. But we have to seek it out in our own worship and do away with it. We have to take action. But let's consider the word for chamber. And chamber is going to come up again in a strange place. The word for chamber is kubah. It means chamber. It also means a large room in a tent. Its primitive root is kabab, which means to speak a curse. Now this is from its more Latin side, but from the Hebraic terms, it means to denounce or to declare something to be evil and detestable. So what then is the first action that was taken? He went after false worship and denounced it, declaring it to be evil and detestable. What is our first action? We find something to be untrue. We go after it and we pronounce it to be not from the Torah. It's evil. It's detestable. Okay? The Torah tells us topically what is and what is not from Elohim. It tells us topically what is an abomination and what is not an abomination. So how do we know if we are worshiping or what we worship is not right? Do we depend on the doctrines of the church fathers or the decrees of the rabbis? Definitely not. We look at the instruction of the Torah. It's not hidden. It's very clear and very easy to understand, even if we read it as a story. We have 10 commandments that lay